was living on like $30 a month. It's $1 a day, right? At times I didn't have money to eat properly. I knew I had to make this decision to find my financial freedom, to get this money. It was almost like a prison. I behaved like a prisoner, just waiting to get out of the prison. Raising the first money was giving me such a freedom of mind. It was freedom to go big.
Ready to go? Daniel, I am so excited for this. I've wanted to do this for a long time. I had a great chat to Brandon yesterday who gave me so many tips. So thank you so much for joining me today.
Well, Harry, thank you so much for having me. It's always fun to see you. Especially, this is a little bit unusual because, as you know, we met a lot more often in the gym of our building.
It's absolutely true. And you put me to shame in the gym. So I'm quite pleased to be out of there. But I would love to start with a little bit on you. I think great entrepreneurs are like shaped in childhood. What were you like as a child, Daniel? And when you think about like what your parents and teachers would have said about you, how would they have described you?
Maybe they will say that I was a little bit of a curious child that was argumentative, maybe at times too argumentative, especially for the likes of my parents. So I always like to engage like in debates and have my opinion and talk maybe a little bit too much. But I think I lost it with time. So now I prefer a lot more to listen to people. But curiosity was something that always kind of stuck with me.
Were you good in school?
In primary school, I was good. But after that, I discovered, other activities like girls and going to pool and hanging out with boys. So I was pretty average, except math, where I had like a natural inclination.
Honestly, I love to hear that because I think you can sometimes hear some stories where it's like, super whiz from like day one and it just feels quite unrelatable. I did hear that I had to ask you how you learned to code. I chatted to Luciana before and she was like, you have to ask him how he learned to code. So what was that story?
Well, I think it's pretty wild after today's standards. So I am not the typical hacker that started, creating his first game when he was 8 or something like this. So I went to university to math because it was quite easy for me to get in, really. I haven't studied at all, really, to pass the exam to the university. But I went to computer science. I went to math and computer science, so I have a dual degree. And I went to computer science just because it was a little bit fancy at that time. But I was very disappointed in the university. You need to picture like early 1990 Romania, just full of communism, but all the professors, the atmosphere was still very communist, ugly, people with kind of a fixed mindset. So honestly, after the first week at university, I decided I don't want to go there. So literally, I went only to like exams. So that was not. No, it was not my thing.
Respectfully, how did you pass when you don't attend any of the classes and you just go to exams?
It was a little bit of the, Wild West at that time. So it was not mandatory to attend, actually. So I went once in a while. I get to know my colleagues. I learned for exams, but that was it. I started to play bridge. So it was a big passion for me. In university. Maybe you should ask me how did I learn English, because it's even more interesting than coding.
How did you learn English? Because also you learn quite quickly. Sorry, I'm interrupting you, but I remember when I interviewed Brandon 4 years ago or something, like respectfully, your English was not nearly as good. Like it's got so much better.
Yeah, I'm a total anti-talent, to foreign languages, especially to English. But so when I was like 19, 20, and I started to play bridge, I didn't know any English at all. But the only good books about bridge were in English. So actually, I and a friend of mine bought together. We put, we had very little money, so we put together money to buy a really big book, an American book. Like I still remember, it's a guy called Goren, and it's called like American Standard or something, talking about bridge. And I had to read the book with a dictionary. So that's basically what I was so passionate about it, because this is how I actually learned English. I know a lot of words, but my pronunciation is very bad, because it was, the tendency was to pronounce as you read.
Yeah.
So, and my musical ear, it's not there. So in the last 4 or 5 years, I worked quite a lot with a great professor, teacher, I would say, of dialects. She's a great lady. She works actually with Hollywood actors to teach them different dialects that are required, English dialects that are required when they speak in the movies. So they can speak English with a Russian accent like me.
So if I ask you for an Arnold Schwarzenegger, like, I'll be back, I should go and see her.
Yeah. Actually, it's funny. She introduced once to Nicole Kidman. And I talked with her like 5 minutes, because Nicole was doing a movie in Australia where she played someone with a Russian accent. And she thought that listening to me would help her.
And so you just had to talk to her for 5 minutes just to sing. You can talk about anything, just the weather, the shopping, whatever.
So if you learn Russian, well, maybe you will be good to act like a Russian in London.
I mean, there we go.
If you talk too much with me.
I love imitating people, and so I can imitate pretty well. Okay, so we learn English by playing bridge with the dictionary there. I love that. What was the first job? You come out of university where you didn't really attend.
So I had to learn coding before getting, because my first job was in, as a programmer. Actually, not really, because I had to sustain myself since I was 19. It was a tough family situation, but so basically my family couldn't support me any longer. So I had to do all sorts of gigs. Like at some point I was doing some kind of currency arbitrage. I was buying dollars in Bucharest, and I was selling, I went to some other town where I was born, and selling to the people that I know them for a little bit of a margin. So I had to do all sorts of things. I started actually a company in my early 20s, not a software company, but it was something to help students find jobs. At that time, it was very difficult you had to, all the ads were in like newspapers, so you have to go and call to paid phones, so talk to a lot of people. So what we did, actually, we centralized all the jobs, call them, understand all the requirements, and even booked our people. So it was like a marketplace. So it helped me, live comfortably for a year, until I got bored by this.
Did you make money with that?
A little bit, yeah. It's money at that standard. Probably I made, $1,000 in that year. But it was good money. Because going to my first job, I was living on $30 a month. I know, it's $1 a day, right?
Yeah.
And
were you living incredibly frugally?
Incredibly frugally, yes. And
you didn't eat.
At times I didn't have money to eat properly. I remember days when I didn't eat at all. That leaves a mark.
Does it?
For sure, yeah, it does.
What mark does it leave?
It's a kind of anxiety that you have in life. So until kind of recently, when money didn't matter, honestly, I always had this anxiety of the times. It's not clearly internalized that I'm afraid that I am gonna get to a position where I don't have to eat, but the thought can be there. And I think it makes you a little bit more paranoid and afraid. maybe in a way it's negative and positive, obviously. I think it's positive because it keeps us a little bit grounded to reality. And but it's negative because I think it can drag you. It doesn't let you go as fast as you can. Because somehow to me it was a very big change when I raised the first money, the seed round. Because I bootstrapped UiPath for like 10 years.
Yeah.
And raising the first money was giving me such a freedom of mind. Because it was freedom and responsibility in the same time. But it was freedom to go big. Because I was completely free of, of my internal breaks related to my upbringing when I had to do everything by myself. And some people trusted me. So then, I don't know, something switched in my head. And I stopped having any fear.
What was it that caused the switch? Was it the fact that people put their faith in you? Was it the fact that you had the money to spend? What was it that caused that switch?
Maybe all of them. But it was a clear switch because I was for quite a few years like fearless. Just go spending every single penny. That's an interesting story because between seed series and Series A that we did here in London with Accel, I had to raise a bridge round from my existing investors. And we were negotiating for a long time, like to do a cap, like 20% cap, and they wanted the cap, and I wanted uncapped. We haggled until like the last day, and I didn't have. Monday we were hit zero in the bank, and it was a company with 100 people always. So it was, but I knew that, it's you have to play a little bit this game. And this guy, Dan Lupo, which is a great friend of mine, and he was the first investor that discovered UiPath, came to me and said, okay, Daniel, we can do unlimited, but it's going to be 25% discount. I said, okay, sure, of course. And they wired the money and everything was fine. But the thing is, I had no fear. It never crossed my mind that I might get into troubles, and I put the entire company. I was completely set to go forward, and we went really like a rocket.
So the living on $1 a day and coming from such a frugal background gave you the mindset that you could afford to take massive risk, correct?
Maybe. In a way, I knew what is the worst. So I survived the worst. What could have... When you have the opportunity, you really want to go big on the other... There is no point in just getting to where I could have been in a normal situation. So maybe that was the resort that freed me in a way that I could be. It was a compensation maybe for that frugal days in a way. So I really thought that I owe to myself to do it big.
Talk to me about the first job where you got paid $200 a month, because we're on $1 a day there, very frugal living, and we get that scar that's very ingrained in one's mind. And then you get a first job. Was the first job $200 a day? No, sorry, $200 a month?
Yes, that's correct. But first, let's go to learning to code.
Yeah.
And so in university, I didn't learn much, honestly. I learned some basics, like they were teaching Pascal, I think, or something. But I met this friend of mine when I was living with 30, and he told me, I asked him, what are you doing? He says, I'm fine, I got a new job. Like, what job? I asked him, like a programmer. I said, okay, that's fine. How much money do you make? And he said, $300 a month. And I was literally shocked, because it was 10 times what I was making. And so I thought to myself, wow, I'm missing something big here. All my gigs and all this, the stupid life that I'm doing, and I just can learn to program and I can get a nice job. And that was like summertime. So I got my girlfriend at that time gave me a book about programming. It was called Programming C++, a great guy, written by the inventor of C++, Bjarne Stroustrup. But it was not the original book. It was a book, that was copied in a Xerox machine.
Fax,
It was like a fax. Yeah. I found at that time that book fascinating somehow because I learned C and C++ from that book. So I really read it like an adventure book. So again, without a computer. So I read that programming book and I went through the exercises and how he described the concepts, but without trying on a computer. So I always I never wrote too much code in my life, but my specialty was mostly to reason about code and make programs working, to debug. That was where I was at my best. But writing code to me was always a little bit boring, to write too much. Because once you had what you want to program in your mind, many times I thought just putting on piece of code was a little bit boring. But the fun part was always when I made that code that I wrote working.
It's pretty extraordinary, though, to learn code without testing, like without iteratively doing it. That is pretty exceptional.
I think it was helpful in a way because I think there are two types of developers that I've seen in my life. There are the hacker types that learned coding, just tinkering with the computer. And they are very good at finding, different ways to do things that they always know. But when you learn more theoretically, and I had my math background and then reading, learning more theoretical, I think you can have a broader perspective of things. So you can be more of like a software architect and you can understand bigger systems if you have this theoretical background. So it kind of helped me because to me, it's in life, even today, I really like to read from time to time different programming topics. Nowadays, of course, about AI. But I learn, a lot of programming language just by reading. I don't have to program. I didn't program JavaScript, but I learn, I understand. So I can have a conversation about JavaScript or good systems. Or I learn a language called Erlang. That was like WhatsApp is written in Erlang. So it's a nice actor-based system that helps write parallel code. And then I can extrapolate different ideas to our own system. Like when we build serverless, how does it compare to this? So it's a lot of theoretical work. This is my mind works best by trying to connect different concepts and try to get the best of them and apply to solve a problem.
Do you think you're good at then telling others what you see in your head or the way that you want systems to be built?
No, I'm not good at all. This is where I really struggle.
Why?
It's hard. There are some. My mind speaks well faster. My thoughts go well faster than my speaking rhythm. So sometimes I'm trying to keep up pace with my thoughts. So maybe it's a little bit unintelligible to the people in front of me. So I had to develop these skills to kind of explain more what I think in a little bit in frameworks. Okay, what are the principles, and then how you can fill in the blanks in. Actually, it was being the CEO of a public company was instructive to me in a way, because you have to talk to investors, and you need to clearly explain, your business. But you cannot go, off the record. There is no such a thing, right? So you have to be pretty precise. So I work a lot with our IR person, Kelsey. I think I learned quite a bit from her.
What do you think you learned?
I think I learned a very simple trick. Actually, when you explain something, go first and tell what you, in high level terms, what you are gonna talk about it, and then drill down each of the items. And this is kind of a framework to explain. So I'm gonna talk about 1, 2, 3, and then 1, and this is, and then you can ask, do you want me to drill down in one of these points? It's a little bit easier.
Yeah, I totally get that. Okay, so if we go back, because I want to kind of unpack it chronologically. So we go back, we learn programming through this wonderful book, thanks to that current girlfriend, C++. You owe her a lot. How was the job?
That was the most amazing job I think I had in my life.
Why?
So I really like my boss that hired me. And I think we had an amazing human connection in a way. He was like, I think, 10 years older than me. He graduated the same university, so he also had like a math background. And at the interview, so it was my first job, he didn't ask me anything to write. It was just a pure discussion. And at the end, he said, okay, you can have the job. But it was a catch a little bit with that. They didn't have a computer to give me to work like a regular job, because it was a very small firm. So during day, all the computers they had were occupied by people. So what I had to do was to work night shifts. And that was kind of amazing, because during the night shift, I had access to their most powerful computer. And it was very quiet. It was just be there. And it was first time in my life when I had really access to a computer as much as I wanted. So basically, I turned for the next 6 months. I went there every day. So I stopped even seeing friends, anybody. I worked literally 12, 14 hours a day, even more. I went home only like in the morning when, they opened the first, like the metro line was open. I went home, sleep, and by like 6 p.m. or something, I was back to just working. And I learned that was, I was transported in another world. So I think I was the happiest in a way in my life. I was just doing and seeing, how it's like building something. I think this is maybe what Michelangelo, felt when he creates something, a sculpture, because you see it. You see, so the work of programmers are, in a way, lucky and happy creatures, because they build something. They are creators. They are, in a way, artists. So they get the feeling of being completely in the flow. To me, even when in the moment of most anxious to me, if I went in front of a computer and I could focus like 30 minutes and start to work, after that my anxiety was gone completely, and I just got peace.
Can I ask, when you listen to yourself speak today and you hear yourself speak about going to work night shifts on computers that no one else was around you and the office was empty, does it feel like a different person? It's such a different life.
Yeah.
How do you feel when you hear yourself say that?
I miss it in a way. I missed the times when you learn. It was a time of extreme learning and extreme focus, and single-handed into one direction. So I miss it. Now I don't have this luxury anymore. My only moments when I create something, when it's the rare times when maybe I'm in an airplane and I try to write poetry. I do it only for my own sake. I share maybe only with a few friends. But this is the only moments when I feel transported in that state of flow. Otherwise, my days are mostly talking to people, making decisions, and fun for me is also when I start, maybe even in the night, I'm reflecting on some kind of features that we have to build, product roadmap, priorities, discussions with people, but I don't have this sense of intense focus, which I kind of miss. I need to find a way to go back to that.
Do you feel like you're still learning?
Yeah. To me, you are dead when you have stopped learning. And this is what I tell, everybody. If you feel like you didn't change considerably in the last 6 months, that means you did something wrong. So for me, all the years are kind of in an accelerating learning mode. Definitely in the last 12 to 18 months, I think I learned more than the past 5 years combined. And the last 5 years were amazing by any metric. So I feel right now I'm actually in my prime of learning.
Has there ever been a time when you felt stagnant or like you weren't learning at that rate?
Yeah, when I was working in Microsoft in my early 30s, I was also stuck in my mind a little bit. I was very unhappy being there, not necessarily in Microsoft or in US, but being removed from my comfortable life that I had in Romania. And I kind of forced myself. It was my decision. Somehow in me, I know what is the right thing to do. And I have to push and force myself to do the right things, but hating myself in the same time. I didn't have the peace of mind to accept that the right decision can be actually the happy one. I think I could have done a much better time there. I could have learned more. I could have done a lot. Look, gym, for instance, I could have worked with the trainer. Because I went to gym quite a bit when I was there. But I always doing things, in a light way, not pushing. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I do.
You have to push yourself. I didn't push myself there too much, and I didn't.
Why? I'm just trying to understand why not though, because you did push yourself when you were going night shifts and you were living.
I was in a negative state of mind. I knew I had to make this decision to find my financial freedom, because I was, that was my biggest desire in life, to get this fuck you money, my financial freedom. I never wanted to be in a situation to just work for money. To me, that was very stressful. And so it was the thing. You have to work, get your financial freedom, but in the same time, that made me extremely unhappy. But it shouldn't be. It was, again, it should have been a switch. It's a simple switch. I could go back to myself and explain to myself a very simple switch. And you have to do it. Okay, we all agree that's the right thing to do. But what's preferable can also be pleasurable. This is also one of the biggest wisdom piece that I heard in life. For the wise man, what's preferable is pleasurable. It's very powerful. So the switch I would have made in my mind was to enjoy the preferable things. And I would have done a lot of things better. Learning to ski better, learning to go to gym, learning to play tennis better, learning English, meeting more people. But being stuck, I was almost like a prisoner. I behaved like a prisoner, just waiting to get out of the prison. Even in a prison, you can have the mentality, I have to stay 5 years in a prison and be totally unhappy with yourself and say, okay, this is what it is. But I will learn philosophy. I will do this and this. It's a switch. We exist only in our mind. The external factors are not that important as the running of our own thoughts. If you change them a little bit, you climb mountains. You climb Everest.
So what allowed you to change your own perceptions to climb Everest? What was that switch that unlocked in that period of unhappiness when you were a prisoner?
I wanted to break out of prison. So I took all the courage that I had, and none of my friends at that time believed that I'm gonna leave Microsoft in US and go back to Romania with very little money. So in 5 years working in Microsoft, my whole savings were like $150,000, which was not even enough to buy a nice apartment in Bucharest. But it was fuck you money in a way for me. I could have lived for a while without doing something that I don't want to do. But going back to Romania, the only chance for me was to basically build a company. This is why I wanted to go back.
Before we move to kind of going back and kind of building UiPath, I have to ask, on the prison element, if we carry on that analogy, you can always extend your sentence. And what I mean by that is you can always be on the treadmill. I remember when I started, it's like when you make £1 million, that's fuck you money when I started. And then it's like, I got to 1 million and it's like, well, it's not actually, you can't buy an apartment with 1 million if it's in a nice area in London. It's probably 5 million. And then you get to 5 million and you're like, well, I can probably buy an apartment now, but then I have no money at all. And so you can always push it.
Yeah.
How do you think about that? And how would you advise me, who actually struggles with that, honestly?
In a weird way, I have some remaining fear of this struggle, and just completely stupid for me.
But it makes me feel better that
the way to deal with this is to realize that you are a valuable professional and human being. When I struggled the most, I was actually not in the medium that put me in the spotlight somehow. And when you are in the wrong medium, you start to doubt yourself quite a bit. When you don't doubt yourself and you go to work and meet the people that appreciate you, this problem with money disappears. You'll always make money, Harry, and you'll always make good money. It's just getting to the right people. Getting your people. I think once you understand that you have an intrinsic value, and it's not only to go and find the right timing and assemble yourself maybe 10, 20, 100, you'll be free, and you can enjoy what you are doing better.
Do you enjoy what you're doing now?
I do. I do, and I don't. And I feel I am an emphatic type of person. So I read emotions in people. And in my position, you get to know all the shit that happens, most of the shit that happens in the company, and all the bad rumors and all, this guy did this and this is not good for our culture and everything. It comes, and many times you cannot even action, but it poisons your mind somehow. So all this, you have to deal with all this negativity and in the end this is why when someone says it's lonely to be the CEO of the company, because eventually all the shit,
creeps up to you.
Creeps up to you. Yeah, exactly.
I totally get that. And it definitely does. And it is because you can't talk to anyone else because you can't be disloyal to other team members. Do you know what I mean? You can't speak badly of someone to someone else and unload that burden.
Even if you speak to them and unload, and I have some good friends, and I work with people for many years, it's not kind of the same. It's not the same position where it's like you cannot put yourself completely in the shoes of the other. I have the empathy, but I don't feel your pain. All right? and I have a sense of the pain. They can understand that it's negative for me, but they don't understand how much it affects me.
Did you ever have self-doubt? You mentioned there about doubting yourself. Did you ever have self-doubt?
Yeah, I think I always had the imposter syndrome.
You did?
And that's actually, that causes me to make the biggest mistakes as a CEO and, in my professional.
Why is that?
Because doubting myself, my tendency was to search for and hire people with experience, right? That have done this job before, and they should have been way better than me of doing some sort of job. But the problem is that you cannot compromise the affinity between people. If there is no chemistry, this is not gonna work. So because of my imposter syndrome, I tended to trade off chemistry for experience. And with very rare exceptions, it always went bad.
Did you correct it quick enough?
Most of the time, yes. This idea that hire slow, fire fast. In a way, it's good. It reads good on paper, but it's not applicable in real life.
I prefer hire fast, fire fast.
In a way, it's easier.
Yeah.
But fire fast is not so easy applicable. Huh. Because especially with senior executives, you need to give them, there is a honeymoon, of course, and you need to give them a lot of freedom to do their job. So they start to hire, they build layers, and suddenly when you start to understand that something it doesn't work completely, it's a little bit too late, and you are in the middle of the process, and all you can do is to be hopeful that it's gonna work. And it's very hard to make that decision to fire in the middle when the people are, but you already see the signs that might not work. You see the bad traits of them.
Do you let them know at that point, or do you not? Because it knocks their confidence just as they're playing the game.
Sometimes it's not so easy to tell them, because it's either there are very little facts that maybe sometimes it sounds ridiculous to me if I go to you and say, why did you do this? Or even why do you dress like this? Because let's say if I hire a developer and they come to work in a suit, it doesn't happen. But I'm telling you this time, it's kind of hard to go, man, you look like a clown. Get a nice t-shirt if you want to take it seriously. I'm not good of giving feedback. Even today, to me, I find because of, this is where empathy works against you. It's not easy for me, it's not easy to give negative feedback. I have to trust.
Why is it not easy for you to give negative feedback?
I don't know. I have this. It's a little bit like I have a defect in my brain. I can give easily negative feedback. It's a way of saying, but I can easily point people that I like and I enjoy to some of their negative traits, because in a way I feel that my love for them compensates the pain that I'm causing them, because it causes pain to give feedback to anyone. It's impossible for someone to receive negative feedback without pain. It can be helpful and they can heal, of course, because of the feedback, but it's the bout of pain that they feel that turns me. So I can trade the pain that I feel giving feedback with the love that I give them. But when I don't feel love for them, I don't have this trait. So I feel only their pain. And I feel a little bit like I'm a jerk. But it's a lifelong work to learn this skill. And Like, we talk about Karl Aschenbach,
Yeah.
before starting this. He told me once something very profound. He said, we were talking about firing people, and, I said that it's so difficult to fire people. And he said, Daniel, that's normal. The moment you will stop feeling difficult to fire people, you become like a monster. You will not be a good CEO.
I think he's so true, and I've heard the same. You mentioned Carl there. I spoke to several of your investors before, and I asked for weaknesses as well of Daniel, and some of them said combined that you give too much responsibility to people, and you let them have too much freedom. You mentioned there the execs, and
yeah.
How would you respond to that? Do you think you give too much freedom and too much?
Yeah. I think. Maybe, because also maybe I have the wrong impression about giving freedom to people. I think it's important to give them freedom, but also to inspect what they are doing. Inspecting what someone is doing, it's not necessarily interfering with their freedom. So this is, I think where I'm bad, it's inspecting what people are doing. And I've seen actually to some other executives as well.
Is inspecting not just micromanagement?
No, I don't think so. And I'm not a micromanager. It's far from me to be. But my style is to go pretty deep in some point and test and assess. Because you have to understand that area, but especially in the product and engineering, this is where I do actually a lot of inspecting. And my technique is to prove and go like with this Socratean approach. Why did you choose this? Why? And I don't accept like this is what it is, or we made this decision a long time ago. Well, let's understand why we made it. And you go to a point where they say, okay, we have to change. And it's fine. Sometimes you find early signs of cancer. And it's much easier to kill it from the beginning. But it was always a little bit easier for me to work with product and engineers than to work in the other sides.
Because it's not a language you spoke?
It's not a native language to me. It's a language that I learn. So I'm conversational in go-to-market, finance, HR, marketing, but it's not my mother tongue.
The investor base also said, the exec team has churned a couple of times, maybe more so than other companies. What are some of your big lessons from that? And Aaron Levy, actually at Box, a famous enterprise software founder, says it takes actually 5 exec teams churning to go to a public company, I think is his statement. Yeah. How do you feel about the exec churn and lessons learned?
I think it's kind of easy to explain because most people will have a range where they can operate well. And in a hyper-growth startup, the company grows faster than the range. It happens. So what can you do? You hire more experienced people and you put them in command. You cannot keep those people. And at times, these people feel that they are entitled to get that position and they leave. At times, they feel this is an opportunity to grow and learn. And they stay there and they earn their position there. But it's normal, and it maybe it's 5. I don't know, maybe 5. It was 4 or 5 probably, yes, until we went public.
In that journey of going public, I do want to slightly go back to the early years of UiPath. It's just the most insane story, Daniel. As you said, you bootstrapped it for 9.5 years, 10 years?
Yeah.
I mean, that is so atypical compared to anything else that we see in this industry. Can you just take me to that bootstrapping journey? Why did you not raise money? What did that look like in that journey to the first raise? Did you have product market fit? Like, help me understand that.
Well, so initially I didn't even think that was possible for someone to give money to almost nothing. I thought I have to build something, show a product, and then maybe. But I started end of like 2005. It was still the winter of the VC industry, even in the Bay Area. I think the science of the spring was just about to. I remember early days of TechCrunch. So I started to be connected actually more with what happened in the Bay Area from Romania than when I was in Seattle, when I was completely isolated in Microsoft world. But still, I didn't think that I would be able to convince an investor to put money. It was very remote thought. It was a good learning. I don't think I was actually ready without these 10 years. Maybe some people learn entrepreneurship maybe if you are born and raised in a culture of entrepreneurship, maybe it's easier. So you can drop off from Stanford and you can start a company. But for me, these 10 years were my formation years. And I don't regret that. Because I learned actually to go through adversity. I learned a lot of the traits that I use as the CEO. I learned how to write a Google ad copyright, which is actually it's a very valuable thing in itself. I learned how to be succinct with my thoughts because you have to write an ad. You have to describe the product that you love with hundreds of features in just 3 lines, okay, with few words each line. So you need to apply some kind of metaphorical thinking. It's a great learning. I learned software licensing. I had to read, I took like Microsoft Word license and then copy and change it and create a license. It's a lot. Selling, talking to customers, supporting them. I did this.
I totally agree with you, and it kind of makes me think of constraint enforces creativity, which is often the saying. My worry today, Daniel, and you know this as an investor too, obviously investing in companies, is that you get a 5 million seed round and come out of a great company. You can hire a great marketing person, you can hire a great salesperson. All of the things that you learned, you don't need to do from day one. And I worry that we've lost the entrepreneur that you are and were because of the abundance of capital.
Yeah, and abundance creates monsters. It's like you cannot have a tennis player that just go and plays Wimbledon and win Wimbledon. They have to go through juniors. They have to. It's 10 years, right? From maybe 7 to 17 that makes a tennis player.
Yeah.
I don't think nobody can skip it in tennis. Even in entrepreneurship, I think many people that get, obviously very smart people, but a little bit, what I've seen, they are a little bit unidimensional, so they know only their craft. I think when they will be put in difficult situations or to negotiate or to understand, they will fail. It's very difficult to do it without really going through the formation years. Don't you agree with me as an investor?
I completely agree with you, but again, I just worry that I don't think we see it in entrepreneurs today. Like I look at 20 VC and it's like, we didn't make money for 2.5 years. It was 450 shows before we made any money. 450 recordings before $1. It's a long time.
It's a long time.
And I learned so much about it. I did every part of this business. I remember Googling how to create an invoice.
Yeah,
because
exactly.
I didn't know.
I recognize myself in this, yeah.
And I was 19, 20, and I was like, what the fuck is an IO? I've got no idea.
Exactly. I didn't. I had to deal. I used to pay the salaries going to the banking software, and I created bots to pay the salaries.
So where was the business at when you raised the first money 10 years in? Like, how much revenue did you have? How many customers did you have?
So we raised the first money in 2015.
Yeah.
And we finished the year with like $500,000 in revenue.
So 10 years to $500,000 in revenue.
Yeah. But it was an acceleration since 2014. 15, we found the product market fit in RPA.
Okay. In 2014?
So, in 2014, yes.
What changed?
It was an incredible luck in a way. I think we knew so that we built a good product, but we didn't know the market for it. So we built a low code, no code, environment to create automations, right? That kind of emulates people how they work in front of a computer. So we use the user interface. So you can create automation, they click and type like a human user. So it was pretty cool, really. It was not an end-to-end platform, but for what it did, like giving a developer the ability to create an automation, it was good. It was actually the best in the world in what we built. So we knew we have something valuable, but we didn't know it solves such a huge problem. All of my co-founders are engineers like me. So we were naturally trying to solve more engineering problems, IT problems with our tool. And we didn't work with really huge companies. We worked with mostly small, medium businesses. So I didn't see a huge future on that approach until we were found by a guy like middle manager in an Indian company, a BPO company. That was actually in 2013. So it's interesting. On the 1st of March, 2013, we launched the version 1.0 of what has become our RPA product. So version 1.0 called UiPath Studio. 1st of March, 2013. And it didn't have any traction. Because before that, we were selling like an SDK to software developers, and that was more for less technical people. It was a low-code environment. So our developer base were not interested in what we built. But this guy found it on the internet. So he worked at that time with a British company called Blue Prism.
Okay, yeah.
They invented actually the word RPA, credit to them. And they had more of an overarching platform, like to create bots. Only that our tool was way better than their tool to create one single bot. So that Indian guy, for some reason, didn't like Blue Prism. Okay, they thought they are a bit arrogant, inflexible. So by himself, he searched on the internet like a competitor. And Blue Prism, it's also a low-code type of environment. So he searched for something that looked nice. So we had like our low code was really nice from the beginning. We had like a flowchart engine. You can drag and drop the blocks so you can create easily, visually, an automation. So he liked this. And it's crazy. He sent us an email from like his personal Yahoo address. And at that time I was doing all the customer support and queries and everything. So I watched this one and I had a tendency, let's skip this one because we didn't work with individuals. And he wanted the demo of the product. and without telling much about it. But I don't know, I had some kind of intuition that maybe I should still give him a demo. So, and I asked one of our developers, because we were all developers at that time in the company, like 5 people, maybe 5, 7. And I asked one of our developers to connect with the guy and give him a demo. After 1 hour, she came to me and told me, Daniel, this guy is actually from a big company. You should talk to him. And I connected right away on Skype, I think, at that time. And he asked me, first question was, how do you compare with Blue Prism? And I told him, and I don't know who Blue Prism is. First of all, let me search on the internet. So I searched Blue Prism, and it was funny because they had this typical, at that time, typical corporate boring page with, saying basically nothing, and with career investors. And I told him, well, looks like this is a big company. So we cannot compare. We are just a small startup. This is what I told him, very frankly. But he liked it. And he talked to his upper management. And they actually invited us to go there to India and build... help them to kind of automate the same type of processes that Blue Prism, just to see how our software is.
And so you said yes?
And even more, he said, I give you a chance, but it's gonna be at cost. But look, sometimes there are astral moments in life, and you need to seize them, and you need to feel them. So I knew that was one of that moment. And so I sent 3 people, including, my CTO at that time, and two girls, actually, one that was she talked to, and another. So they were good friends. They went there, they spent like 3 months in Chennai. So I took people out of the programming job to build because we had...
And 3 out of 7.
Yeah.
It's like half your team.
Yeah. But it was very... We understood...
What happened?
The market. We understood this is a big market, first of all. And we understood the requirements of what they expect us to build. Because we were building a good demo, because at that time we used... use our software to build automations, and we use the Microsoft product called, I think, Orchestrator or something. And we create some integration with Microsoft product to deploy our bots and monitor. It was pretty nice. It was a cool solution, and they like it, that one.
And what happened, to that client? I just have to finish that story. So you do it at cost, they love it. What happens?
They become our client. And that, I think it was the biggest single invoice that we sent. That was in 2014, I think. We got like 100K revenue only from that client, which was huge from us. But Harry, most important was that we understood that this is a huge market. So that was a BPO company, but they were doing some work for like a huge American computer manufacturing company at that time. So we understand. Actually, these big companies are flooded in manual, repetitive work, and they don't know what to do with them. It's so much, despite all the advances in APIs, in ERPs, in CRMs. There are so many inefficiencies, and people use
so many.
And our technology works brilliantly. We just need to build a nice orchestrator.
The thing I find so funny about hearing this, Daniel, is like what you hear and what you tell every founder is you need to know what problem you are solving for what customer.
Yes.
And they should know that early on. And respectfully, 9 years into your journey, is when you actually realized what problem you were solving for what customer.
That's true. Yeah, it's not typical.
No,
because
the best stories never are.
Yeah, because we built our software because we like it. It was really an interesting engineering problem to solve. So we did it. I don't advise anyone to do this. It was amazing that it worked in our case. But if you do this and you build a piece of engineering that you really like, and you become a specialist and you become the best in the world in it, if it happens later on to find a great use case and a great market for this, it's hard for someone to stop you.
I know it's hard to say, but if you hadn't have got that email from that Indian person in that company, do you think you would have found the market?
Yes, for sure, because RPA has become significant market. We contributed quite a bit for RPA to become a good market. But it's possible that I would have lost 1 or 2 years and we would never be at that size.
What was the price and size of the seed round?
1.6 million to, I think, 8.1 post.
1.6 to 8.1 post. Okay.
It was not that bad, 2015.
No, I think that's it's like a middle of the range. I wouldn't say it's expensive and I wouldn't say it's cheap.
Yeah, but we had 500,000 in revenue. For a company having 500,000 in revenue was maybe
a little bit cheap.
A little bit cheap, but we were a company in Romania.
So what was
seriously?
But
it was very interesting because we negotiated for such a long time. Actually, that was the funniest thing. I knew that I am on something big. So I met this guy, Dan Lupu, in March 2014, right? This is when, and it was kind of funny because I asked him to come to my office, and the first time I dressed up, I had like a jacket on me, and he came with a hoodie. And it was funny when I saw, and that was a better way to get my trust because I was very skeptical.
Sure.
At that time of people putting money in the company, and they came initially with some outrageous terms.
Like what?
I don't know, all sorts of drag along and all. I don't remember, but it was awful.
Terms that weren't great at the time.
Yeah, terms are not great, really. And but I engaged in the discussion with him. So we signed the term sheet, but then we had to. It was a long process to actually. No, they gave me a term sheet in August, I think, 2014. And we signed actually the deal. They wired the money in July 15. So it was such a long time.
Whoa.
But eventually they invested in common stock. So the negotiation went to all this drag. In the end, discussion was, man, if you want to invest, that's fine. So they invest in common stock, but his only ask was, look, we were growing. At this point, it looks like the interest. We are talking with big companies like Kaiser Permanente left a voicemail to us asking, guys, let's connect. That's kind of unheard of for a small startup. RPA started to get traction. So they invested in common stock, but with having a pari passu with the next round.
Gotcha.
That was their term. Which is, they made billions, so they did well.
Sure, I've met them and they're very happy about that investment. Yeah, it's made their funds. How did you feel going into Accel? Respectfully, that was in Romania, and as great as they are, it's still a more local firm. When you come to Accel in London, and we've both been to their offices, the beautiful offices.
Yeah, that convinced me. The beautiful office had an impact on me. You feel it in the stomach a little bit, because you are not. Well, at that time, I was not used to go in such amazing places. They are like in the movies for me. In all fairness, Microsoft Office don't compare with Accel Office in London. And you feel a little bit, it's easy to be impressed when you are young and you are not experienced. Okay. But it's not in a bad way.
Okay, but it's so interesting. So you liked it and you're impressed by it. I have other founders, not talking about the Accel office, but I had a founder this morning who spoke about offices in VC.
Yeah.
And they said, I hate it because it's paid for from the blood and sweat and tears of entrepreneurs like me.
I can understand that angle, but I wanted at that time to associate with something that looks successful. It's good. Accel, it's one of the top firms in the world.
Yeah.
I think it's kind of normal to
100%.
get. We have an amazing office in New York right now. Google inspired me. So when I was in Microsoft, that's an interesting story. When I think a corporation is losing its way and they don't understand where they are in terms of like competition. I talk about Microsoft 2004 or something, right? Not Microsoft today. So I receive an email about some cost reductions. And Google I think they just IPO'd. We knew about how they treat employees with Michelin star chefs and massages and all this stuff, right? Mm-hmm. And Microsoft, in that cost-cutting email sent to everyone in Microsoft, one of the point that I still remember was that in some buildings in the basement had some showers. So if you go with the bicycle, and they said they are removing the towels in the showers. Now, when I read this, I said to myself, this company has lost it. No, seriously, it's a company who run a company that you send an email to everybody. What's the psychological impact?
We don't matter. I was like, I would feel like, seriously?
Maybe, I don't know, they would save some money, but does it matter for the psychological impact? For what message do you send?
Do you think about that today? When you're communicating to the team, do you think, what message am I sending?
I do. I do all the time. And the message that I'm trying to send them, it's always authentic. I cannot be anything else. I hardly speak. So if I try to pretend and I try to make up the truth and the reality, I think I always fail. I connect with people, but by speaking my mind.
Do you ever get in trouble for speaking your mind? And what I mean by that is, like, people here say that I'm too direct. I'll say, Daniel, that was shit. That's really annoyed me.
Not necessarily really. Maybe sometimes I tend to use maybe metaphors when describing stuff. I like analogies, and it's a funny one. Once I had a speech to my entire leadership team, and it was a big moment when I wanted to announce then that Rob will become the sole CEO. So I wanted to give like a nice speech, but so I told them about some kind of my biggest learnings in leadership. And I told them clarity. A leader is one that should bring clarity to people and explain. This is to me one of the biggest trait of a leader. And I explain the concept of clarity using like a biblical analogy, like the creation of the God and Adam, and how God told Adam, do everything you want, but don't eat from this tree. And I said that in a way that's bad leadership. It's good and bad, but it's because God created clarity to Adam, very clear rules. But what God didn't do was he didn't explain clearly to Adam why the rules are there. So God created temptation in Adam to eat from that tree. A better message. So this is what leaders should communicate well, for sure. So it's an interesting analogy to me. So a good message would be, I charted all the universe since the creation up to this point. So you are safe here following the rules that I gave you because I discovered them. And this is why you have to behave in a certain way. But this is uncharted territory. And this is be careful. And we have to go together in that uncharted and find new rules. To me, that would have been a better leadership message in a way. But I think in a way when you use too colorful metaphors, people are taken aback. So it was kind of a lesson maybe to use something more palatable to people. And it's easy to explain that clarity metaphor in other terms. Because I still believe as a leadership lesson, this is my biggest lesson. Provide clarity to people, explain the rules, basically explain your decisions. You don't have to say, we decided this and this, because it will always create interpretations, temptations, explain them clearly, and explain what is uncharted territory. It's very important, so they understand that they have no compass. So it's a different.
You mentioned uncharted territory there. I heard there was a rather interesting period of the company, and I think it was 2020, when the company was actually pretty developed at this stage, but you'd spent, bluntly, a lot of money quite quickly. I think it was 400 million in a year, whatever that number may be. And it was more than planned.
That was 2019.
2019. Take me to that moment, because that's an oh shit moment.
Well, I remember it very well. Because it was like in the middle of the summer, I think beginning of August. And my plan for that year, 19, was that I will burn maximum $150 million, which was fine. We had really enough money. We had, I think, like 500, 600 million in the bank. So I plan to burn 150. I had a very rough, simple plan. So we finished 2018 like with 175 million in ARR, something like this. And I said to my team, guys, we will capacitate this company to get 600 million next year. I know it sounds crazy, but I will give you a buffer of $150 million. So if we do only 450, I think we are still fine. I'm okay to invest, to burn 150 reality is more complicated than this, but high level, the math stands. In long term, it doesn't stand, because you can ask, but next year, if we start with 150, at that time we were growing more than 150%. Growth can help with all the diseases of small company. You grow fast, it doesn't matter. And so I was all into growth, but so in beginning of August, we Ashim transition from like customer success lead into Ashim is our current CFO, into leading FP&A. And he casually told me in the meeting that, Daniel, whatever we do, we will burn 300. He said, I said, this is impossible, because all the time we were working in this exception. We are getting the 450, we are getting 150. It's a huge difference. It's much easier to control costs.
I've literally
than
got
growth.
goosebumps.
Yeah. And so it was.
How did you feel?
Well, you feel terrible because you might lose the company. It's fucking terrible. And so we had an emergency meeting. I think Luciana was there. So we met 15th of August in New York. And that was the moment we decided we have to stop the train and hiring. And we were hiring on all cylinders. So we have to stop the train. We had to do a reduction in force. And it was the first, and think about it, was 2019. Everything was going well in the economy. And we announced a reduction in force. It was a terrible moment for us. I think it was extraordinarily difficult for me. And talking to the company, and we had to fire. We fired, I think, like 10% of or more, 15%, something like this, 400 people probably, out of 3,000. It was very difficult, but one of our, I think the second biggest competitor of ours at the time, behaved very nasty. So they were celebrating. They sent messages on LinkedIn. This is what's happened. This company is just, has like clay legs, all this, in a very celebratory way. But the bad thing for them, they continue to hire right into the COVID. And we've become a much better, leaner company. So we entered COVID as leaner company. Actually, my recollection of all of our reduction in forces, it's like a surgery. After the initial shock, we become a better company.
What did you learn from that? Because it's really hard, as you said, 400 out of 3,000, whatever that is, 12%. No one else was doing it. It's not a great signal for the company. It's tough to do as a leader. It sucks. As Carl Eschenbach said, you should never lose the empathy of hurting when it fires.
Yeah. Our rating on Glassdoor and this, plummeted and all. The learning is that in life you have to do what is the right thing. And you just have to swallow the pain and the cost. And if you do the right thing, I think, company will heal and will become better. This is what happened.
One of my closest friends, mentors, LPs, just taught me one thing. He said, you're never wrong to do the right thing. Maybe hard, but you're never wrong to do the right thing. The only question is, what's the right thing? Now, my subsequent question...
At that time, it was clear that was the right thing.
I mean, absolutely. The question that I have associated to that is, again, speaking to many of your investors, they said, well, Daniel's approach to risk on the back of that is a little bit different to how most people think about risk. How do you feel about how you think about risk today and in the past?
Depends. There are buckets of risk. Sometimes I'm very fearful and I'm ashamed of myself. But sometimes I don't have the same sense of risk as other people. So I can go much faster and bigger, make bigger bets. I don't think of the consequences so much.
What is in what bucket? Is it like kill the company in that bucket and everything else fine? How do you categorize it?
I don't feel kill the company in a way, but I am more drawn to the upside than to, the downside.
Is that because you have money now, do you think? When you don't have money, you kind of want to...
No, I did the same I told you, after the first round of investment, that switch happened in my mind.
In terms of the switch happening, getting Sequoia as an investor is a dream for many entrepreneurs. How did that deal come to be?
Let me give you one piece on this story. So when I met Carl first time, for some reason I didn't feel the most amazing chemistry with him. And so I said basically no to Sequoia, to our Series B. and we Series B was led by Accel US and Capital G, Kleiner Perkins, and some other people participated. But I said no to Sequoia. I don't know why we didn't hit it off, but it was based only on one interaction with him, and I actually told him directly, and I got the good advice not to give Carl the bullshit answer and reason, and I told him that I didn't feel that was the best chemistry between us. And then was when Carl really impressed me, because I expect as many people that will turn them off and they will never speak with me, and that can actually turn them against the company. And Sequoia can damage a company investing in competitors, helping them, of course. So I didn't want to create an enemy of Sequoia, of course. But it was interesting because being honest with Carl, creating a little bit of a competitive spirit in him, because he told me later, I told myself, okay, I have so many great relationships with so many people. What was wrong here? So made him a little bit curious. So we stayed in touch. And they also talked to competitors of us. But Carl decided that if Sequoia is going to invest in RPA, it's going to invest only in UiPath. Even before signing with him, he told me upfront, very extreme candor. I really appreciate it. And since then, we built an amazing relationship. But it was built on a great foundation of trust.
When Sequoia invests in your business, does it change overnight? Entrepreneurs think that it does. You can get talent that you could never get. Everyone wants to invest in you. Does it actually? Or?
It has a significant effect. Yeah, for sure. I think there are people that follow Sequoia and they go only to Sequoia companies and their place. Yes, it's a big sign.
Can I ask another needle-moving moment is actually when you decided that you would hand over the role of CEO.
Yeah.
Can you take me to that decision? Why did you decide to make the decision? And how did that feel?
Look, I always wanted what's best for the company. And I never felt that we are doing justice to this company on go-to-market leadership. And I got the opportunity to meet Rob, that actually Carl introduced the two of us. I realized that Rob probably is the best kind of go-to-market leader that we can have. But the only way to get him was to give him the CEO title.
Was it difficult for your ego? Everyone has an ego, and you're the founder.
No, but think about, I built this company from nothing to more than $1 billion, like the CEO of the company. It's enough to feed my ego. So no, even in the beginning, another funny story. In 2014, when I was talking to Early Bird, so they consider me like an engineer, founder, like more like a CTO profile than a CEO. And they told me, also in all candor, Daniel, let me introduce someone that might be a better CEO. And I said, sure, yes. So I met a guy, and just a nice guy. And I even introduced him, look guys, this is gonna be our new CEO. And so I was always open a little bit to do what's the best for the company. With this guy, it didn't work. So we went to pitch Early Bird, and I think they realized that it's not working. The pitch together was not really
gelling.
Yeah, it was not gelling. And then they asked me to go again to just pitch myself, and then because sometimes there is a transformation in me, and people, there is kind of a demon that takes over. Sometimes I just have to access it somehow.
What do you mean there's a demon that takes over?
It's like an inner force. that it's not, it can do damage, but if you can control it. When I speak in public, like I used to have a lot of stage fright. And until I realized that this is actually not about me, not about my ego, but it's about my duty to the company and to the people I work. That changed everything. And instead of this force, I call it a demon, but it's a force. It's an inner force that I think all of us have. Yeah. Instead of canalizing it against me, creating the stage fright because it was feeding my ego, I canalize it towards I am a messenger. So you deliver. And you should see my speeches, even in my early days. I always start in a rusty way, but then when I get the rhythm, I gather myself. So I deliver the message.
I've seen them. Yeah, no, I have, and you've got incredibly better. You've definitely progressed in terms of the ability to captivate an audience. I think one thing that I'd love your advice on is like, I always align my happiness to the success of my company or my funds. And that's not a great way to live life, because you'll permanently be happy, unhappy, happy, unhappy. If you apply it to you, bad quarter, you're really... How do you detach your happiness from the state of your company?
I'm not a happy person. But I don't think that maybe this is my way to say the grapes are sour. But I'm not searching happiness in
What are
life.
you searching for then?
I think I'm searching maybe peace of mind and impact and giving my mind, a framework, an environment where to work the best and do its best.
When do you feel you're happiest?
There are bouts of happiness, but I don't have it long. It's not long. It's like for every person. It's nothing. But when I feel at peace, is more when I can. It's more when I can focus. It's like the story, the initial story I told you when I started programming.
Yeah.
With that. This is when even meditating, even saying a prayer gives a little bit of peace. But this is what I'm trying.
Can I ask your advice on something? I was walking with a founder in the park this morning who I'm contemplating leading their Series A, and we were talking about work ethic, and he was like, half the year I work 50 hours a week, and the other half of the year I work 70 hours a week. And I was like, well, I'll give you a tip. Work 80 hours a week all year.
Yeah, I think that's a good tip.
And he said, no, you don't get it. If I did that, my support structures, my relationship with my wife, my family, my friends would break down. And then in the hours that I worked, I would be unhappy. I would be stressed. And part of me is going, maybe. And part of me is going, you just have to work harder than anyone else.
Yeah, part of you would say, don't fucking start a company, man. Get a nice job and have fun. And because I don't believe in work-life balance. And because in a way, building a company is gonna suck you into building the company. I don't think you can really put barriers. Now I'm working, now I'm going home and I relax and the kids are around me and my mind stops thinking of this shit and I just go and play with my kids. It's not working. No, it's obvious it's not working. So you are, to me, you are kind of connected all the time. What does it mean when I don't work? It's very rare, actually, because I'm thinking all the time to the company's problem. And to me, it's work. If I wake up in the middle of the night and I'm thinking how we build better computer vision or how we can collect more data to build models, I call it work, right? because I'm not thinking where is my next vacation and how can I book the trip. I'm thinking on the, so it's, you'll always, but my mind is obsessive. So in a way, it's very hard when I get into something to take off that something. This is where I work, because a lot of time I think I'm overthinking and I go in a circle. So when I feel every time, I tell myself this is not working. Let's give up on this thinking.
Can I ask you one final one before we do a quick fire, which is just, I'm worried today more and more about the size of incumbents. When you look at, you mentioned Microsoft a few times, you obviously worked at Microsoft. Microsoft throw off 330 million in free cash flow per day. You know, I just interviewed Sam at OpenAI, where he openly said, if you're in the application layer in AI startups, we will steamroll you. I'm concerned that the incumbents have never been as large as they are, and that leaves little room for startups.
Maybe it's possible, yeah. Actually, I had a discussion yesterday with two friends of mine from IVP. They are also an early investor. They invested along with Sequoia. In
Eric?
Yeah, Eric and Alex.
Yeah.
They live in London.
Yeah.
And so we were talking exactly this thing. Is it there a space in the application, in application AI? They felt there is in kind of vertical AI, and probably it should be. OpenAI cannot go after all the domains. But I am more with you. I think it's gonna be harder and harder to find. I think maybe it's more like in the beginning of the internet, when the big companies capture it a little bit, and it was some time until big up Salesforce appeared. But I think early years it's more difficult.
Is it difficult for you now that agents are more, like Luciano asked this, but you know, you've been a proponent for agents for years.
Yes.
And now everyone's excited by agents and everyone wants to talk about agents. Does that make life easier or harder for you?
Well, it's both, because it's funny enough, I read yesterday that Microsoft is, with their new AI for consumer, they are thinking to call it like AI for every person. And we had for many years, our slogan was robot for every person. So it's helping, AI it's helping us, because it surfaces more automation opportunities, and it helps us and more with completing an end-to-end process automation. But also creates a lot of narratives. Is gonna AI completely replace automation? What if we build AGI that will do everything better than the human users? But then we are gonna fall doomed, right? So we'll have two AI speaking here to each other. So I'm not on the doomed side of the equation. I personally feel that the current technology, it's in actually the early innings of applicability. So we need to work quite a bit to find the right use cases in the enterprise space. But I don't see it as challenging to...
Do you not think we overestimate enterprise adoption of AI? I asked Sam this the other day.
Up to the day, the adoption, I think the most interesting cases that we've seen are in like coding autocompletion.
Totally.
And outside this, I don't think there are a lot of money right now to be made already. But many people are trying. It's a lot of POCs. It reminds me a little bit as the early days of RPA, with a lot of POCs. But I think there will be certain use, especially in understanding documents, reading documents, long documents, summarization of documents. This is going to be really where we can apply AI as of today. And if we pair it with automations, I think we increase the value of AI. So in this way, it's helpful for us.
Can I ask you, Daniel, we've gone all over the shop today in terms of questions. Is there anything that I haven't asked that I should have asked?
Well, it's probably there are many, but We have time to discover them, right?
What's your most memorable, before we do a quick fire, most memorable moment from the UiPath journey as CEO? The one that you think, when I say that to you, you're like, that moment.
When we established in Japan. And it was atypical for a company because we started, our growth in Japan was for a couple of years higher than in the US. So we established in a way in the same time in Japan as in US. So I always fascinated of Japan culture. And again, really good timing, like this guy that called us in 2013. In 2016, a Japanese guy kind of called us. And he said, I want to bring RPA to Japan. He was the CIO of Asia Pacific of Barclay Bank, I think. And he, very sophisticated Japanese, he worked in New York for Goldman Sachs for a while. He was like the CIO, really. But he came to London, actually, to meet with me and with some other guys, and he looked a little bit strange to me at that time. And he was after a long flight, and he was, tired, but he asked some good questions. I was not sure, really, what we are going to do there. But fortunately, I was in Singapore when in early January, he gave me a call and said, we have an opportunity with the big bank in Japan. But you have to come to Japan and meet that guy in person, because otherwise they will not trust. And it was, again, like this type of seminal moment when I already had plans to go back to Romania to do some other stuff. But I changed my plans and I went to Japan, first time in my life, actually. And I met Koichi. It's this guy, our guy. And then I met, another Japanese guy that was very instrumental for our development. His name is Yamamoto-san. He's still working for SMBC, which is one of the Japanese mega banks. So it was like an immersion into a different culture. And they were started, SMBC at that time had big ambitions. They still have in RPA. I think they have probably to date one of the largest, if not of the largest, implementation of RPA. He gave me, you meet people that you hit it off from the beginning with them. I felt such a good energy, such a trustable person. We went to have shabu shabu. So shabu shabu, it's actually a great bonding experience because he was cooking for me and he put, the meat on my plate, and it was still an amazing feeling that I get it up to date, and I trust him instinctively. And I told him, Yamamoto-san, if you give us a chance, we are gonna invest massively in Japan for us. So that was like mid-January. I will be back in April, and by that time I will have like 2 people working for you. At that time it was nothing, not even Koichi, he was not working. He was doing part-time for us. And then we started actually in April we had like 6 people. And then we went to another dinner, and he showed me, they hired like 150 people, almost different consulting firms that were working all on RPA. And it was I've been so proud going into this, amazing building in Otemachi in the center of financial district. They have an amazing building, a top floor, overseeing like Imperial Garden. And I've seen so many people with their screens open and having UiPath working in that one.
Are you proud of what you've built?
Yeah, of course.
Yeah. But do you take a step back and go, yeah?
Like now, it's a good moment. Usually I don't, but it's good to remember those moments.
It really is.
Yeah.
You have to. Listen, I want to do a quick fire. So I say a short statement, you give me your immediate thoughts. Does that sound okay?
Okay.
So what have you changed your mind on most in the last 12 months?
About myself, what triggers me, I understand better, really, how my mind works and what makes it focus better, what makes it wander, what I understand better the source of my anxiety moments, maybe how to avoid them.
What was the worst decision you've made in the UiPath journey?
It's all not trusting my gut instinct.
Tell me, what are you most concerned about in the world today?
Always have this regard to autocratic regimes. I was born and raised into a regime with a dictator. So I hate those. So I think the potential for doing really terrible things come up with, I think, from regimes that have once people in command and they cannot be challenged. So I think this is, to me, and there are quite a few powers in the world, that fit the bill.
Do you think you're a good operator?
Well, for many years, I thought that I am not a good operator. Lately, I realized that actually I'm a good operator. I had this debate with Ashim, our CFO, and I think I realized that I made the confusion what is an operator. So because an operator is not necessarily a project manager that has follow a spreadsheet of tasks and go and check them. I think more of an operator is a guy that deeply understands the domain where they operate and can challenge people, can probe, can go deep into this. And if we accept this perspective, I think I'm a good operator.
What's the most lavish purchase that you've made?
I cannot talk about it. It's too lavish, man. It's way
I had
too
to
lavish.
ask.
Well, it's too lavish.
Okay. What's the biggest piece of BS advice that you hear most often?
All about this. Only people with experience can, hire people with experience that done this. That's not working.
Everyone says in startups, speed is the most important thing.
It is.
But it took so long to get, it was 9.5 years before the seed round for you. I guess my question, does that contradict each other?
No.
Were you slow?
Speed is the most important thing when you have product market fit. If you don't have product market fit, speed goes against you in a way. So it's because if you go fast with the wrong product, you only destroy yourself.
But you learn. So I would actually disagree with you respectfully that speed, even when you don't have it, you learn faster that it doesn't work, and you try again at something else that doesn't work.
In this sense, yes. But what I mean, I've seen startups and founders, for the sake of speed, with a half-baked product, going and start hiring go-to-market teams, hire, and they lose everything. They lose the company. If you go big before having product market fit, that's the fucking recipe for disaster. So
no, I agree. I think that's the title for the episode. You can have penultimate one. You can have anyone join your board who's not on your board right now.
Yeah.
Who would you have?
Well, the guy that I think I learned the most in my formative years is Paul Graham. I've never met him in person, but he was instrumental to my thinking of building a company, and this is one guy that I would like to have on the board for sure.
He lives in the UK now.
Yeah, I know.
There we go. Final one for you. Where do you want to be in 10 years, Daniel? You're not CEO anymore. Where do you want to be in 10 years? Is there another company in Daniel?
I don't think in 10-year times.
How do you think? In year times?
Yeah, kind of 6 months to a year. I think we have a strategy and a vision for product for 2-3 years. I think it's wrong to think in so many. This is a great saying that we we underestimate what you can do in 10 years. I think the world is going to change so much. I just aim to be healthy, keep my mind sane, and, do good in life in 10 years, nothing more.
Daniel, I've wanted to do this one for 5 years. So thank you so much for agreeing to do this, and I've absolutely loved it.
It was so fun, really. I had really amazing moments.